Welcome to a somewhat different series of Unconventional. This time around, we were at GRIMMFEST for an online interview special. GRIMMFEST is an annual horror film festival based in Manchester, showing some of the best scary movies and short films of that year. So, thanks for tuning in. Over to you, Kieran.
Thank you, Fran. Hello, it's me again, Kieran for Bad Mosquito, and this time around I am going to be interviewing John C. Lyons and Dorota Swice, the creative team behind the film UNEARTH, a horror film in which fracking in a Pennsylvania town ends up unleashing something. Let's just say it's a horror film. It's definitely a horror film. Anyway, let's get into it. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, not bad.
You got quite a setup there behind you.
yeah. I do a lot of streaming and video making in this tiny room.
Nice. Looks nice.
First question. I always think this one's a simple one. I like to start off with this one, but it sometimes ends up being a bit more complicated. And that's simply, what was the inspiration for this film?
The inspiration for UNEARTH was two documentaries, Gasland by Josh Fox and Triple Divide by Josh Burbanek and Melissa Troutman. The state that we're in the United States is Pennsylvania. It's one of the most deregulated states in America for industry. So there's a lot of pollution and a lot of the ramifications of that. And these documentaries showed, they were both made in Pennsylvania, and they terrified us and inspired us to write a story about the people that are affected. You know, because usually industry, where gas wells and other industries are drilled and take place, are in working class communities. You don't see a lot of, gas wells in the wealthy communities. So we wanted to show the struggles that working class people face normally. Obviously, that's been exacerbated in the pandemic. I'm sure same situation in the UK and everywhere. So show what they're up against, and show, how bad decisions, made when really you have little options, can make things worse.
I think I read on your Kickstarter for the project that you grew up in these sorts of farming communities, and it is very clear from even just reading a synopsis of the film that you've got a message that you want to send. I'm just wondering why choose the genre of horror to send that message?
I'll jump in first, and then I'm sure Dorota wants to jump in too. I think through genre, the audiences are intelligent and used to metaphor and allegory, and having character-driven pieces that can also use horror, science fiction, things like that. I think in the best way, really, to creatively show those themes and symbols. So, yeah, with this story in particular, I mean, this is these are real life horror stories that this is based upon. People that, that have their water contaminated in real life, they get cancers, they get skin sores, breathing problems. So these things are, you know, terrifying in real life. So using the genre to heighten, you know, those effects, to us made the most sense to make an impact and, you know, as you said, kind of get the point across, hit the point home.
The genre of horror does lend itself very well to this sort of message sending, because I mean, you could have done another documentary, I'm sure, but by framing it as a horror, it's kind of, you know, throwing the real terror of the situation out there. I was thinking about other films like that, about, you know, humans going too far, unleashing some ancient evil, that kind of thing. You know, over in the UK, we have films like Reign of Fire, where people are mining and release a bunch of dragons and that kind of thing. There's quite a few films like that. What is it about your film that you think makes it stand out from that crowd?
Sure. First, I think we can say that probably the subject. It's kind of, at the first glance, not very entertaining. And also, John, do you want to say something about contraceptives and all the fungus, which it's in real life?
Oh yeah, I mean, just getting on what you were saying, Kieran, like basing as much of it, you know, keeping as grounded as possible for as long as we could. You know, that was always a goal, and I think you know, all good genre films, you know, to a point, to get that fear across that you were talking about, Kieran. You know, you want to make it relatable enough. So even if you know, if you don't work on a farm, you know, we hope that those challenges and the challenges of being, you know, strapped for cash, you know, healthcare is a big issue in the States. You know, if you don't have any money and you have a pretty serious injury, you know, there may be some situations where you can't go to the hospital. You just can't afford to. You don't have health insurance. So, you know, keeping everything in reality as far as from the human side, and then as far as, you know, the, what do we want to call it? The entity, the fungus, you know, kind of our initial monster, if you will, keeping that based also in, you know, the very real cordyceps, which I remember watching Planet Earth with Attenborough, and he's, you know, talking about ants that get this cordyceps fungus that has, you know,
the parasite one.
Yeah, the parasite one, and it kind of has like a mind control effect. So yeah, just basing as much as we could in the real drama of this crazy world we live in, and you know, then taking it from there creatively.
It's interesting that you mentioned those ants and the fungi, because one thing I liked about this one was I've always been a big fan of Michael Crichton's books, and the thing that always scared me the most about his books was that he took actual science and then added a kind of fiction to it. I mean, to the point where they actually tried using amber to resurrect dinosaurs once, because clearly they didn't learn their lessons. And so I always find those kind of horror movies that much scarier. You know, that idea that there is a fungus that lives on this planet with us that can take over the brains of, I mean, insects, yeah, but evolution's a thing. So that to me was especially terrifying. So good work.
Oh, thank you.
So one thing that really took me by surprise with this one was when I watched it, I ended up having to go over onto IMDb. I do for research purposes anyway, but almost every like lead actor in it I recognized from something. And when I discovered that you'd done at least a lot of the funding for this through Kickstarters, through crowdfunding, I was genuinely surprised. You don't normally get recognizable actors involved in, you know, non-studio produced films. So how did you manage to pull in like so many known actors, like Adrienne Barbeau, for example, you know, was a massive name. Yeah, essentially that's my question. How did you manage to get so many known actors involved?
Maybe I just quickly say something. I think the film from the very beginning had just that amazing energy that a lot of talented people from LA or New York were interested in this project. So that's something I have to say, because it's very rare to have such a attention from others. And I know that John put a lot of hard work in that Kickstarter, and and I think you should talk about this more.
Yeah, I mean, good on you for doing your research. Yeah, so it started off as a much smaller feature, as you can see by the Kickstarter. I mean, we set out to raise $15,000, and we're like, all right, let's see if we can raise that much. Or maybe it was even less. Was it less? Yeah,
it was less. And it was like just plan. We would just, John and I, with Canon D5, film the whole thing. And
yeah. But then, you know, it was like a Kickstarter project that they loved, so they highlighted it, and then IndieWire highlighted it, and we ended up getting 150% funded. There were a number of people from like England and France and some other countries, because originally we had just opened it up to, you know, like North America, but you know, we eventually had, I'm trying to remember, you probably know better than I, but like either 250 or 275 backers from then all over the world. And that was kind of our first sign of like, all right, a fracking horror story, like there's some interest in this. And that Kickstarter got us on the radar of Mark Blucas and Allison McAtee, who were the first actors to come aboard the project. And like Dorota and I had seen Allison in, it was, I think maybe Cinemax, this show called Californication with David Duchovny. And she was like, I thought she was like one of the best actors in the show. So that was an interesting coincidence there, because that show was so over the top, but she, like, I could tell she had like some real acting chops. And so we used the Kickstarter funding to shoot a proof of concept, then, is what we ended up doing. And then it was a 2-year process, because in our part of the world, no one's really done like like asked people to fund a movie. So it took 2 years after we shot the proof of concept to get the funding together to make the feature, which is still, you know, a lower budget film. But I think the talent that came on board, Adrian, PJ, Monica, Brooke, Rachel, after that point, it was part contributed to the casting directors that then became interested in our project, Becky Silverman and Lisa Zambetti, who they just really connected to the material and wanted to help us out. And yeah, each of these very talented actors, and it goes down through the crew. That's kind of been the story, is it started off as a small project, but people really connected to the material, and the word kind of kept spreading, and we got better and better talent in front of and behind the camera. Yeah, it was amazing.
But speaking of behind the camera, this is one of the few projects I've met in which you've not got one but two directors working side by side. How is that compared to, directing solo?
It's very convenient because here we get like a natural split of roles, and John got into more actors, logistics, and all that. I would say less maybe visual thing as far as the camera, and I went into the camera working with DP and deciding what lens, what camera to choose. So we had like two different directions, and we try not to interrupt each other work. So whatever I say I want done as far as visuals, John says sure, cool, that's fine with me, and I don't touch his script ideas because he's the one who wrote it. I can just criticize and say that makes no sense or makes sense, so let's take out of it, and we have discussions. But I think it's totally fine. We don't interrupt our work. It's like we have two functions, and it's very comfortable to me, like very makes your work easier. That's another pair of eyes. You don't have to worry about some aspects, and I can focus on my area better than this way. So I think that's very, very helpful.
Agree or disagree, John?
Oh, agree, of course. Yeah.
No, that actually sounds like a really, really good way of doing it. Every director I've worked with is either trained down the acting route or down the film school route. So they have kind of weaknesses in either area, but it seems like you guys got it covered between the two of you. I'm surprised there aren't more co-directors out there.
There's a lot of, actually there's few couples I know about that they do that thing, but yeah, it's not popular because you need someone who you can trust and you have very similar goal and the same vision practically. So it's
yeah, I think you kind of need to have the same overall vision and trust each other to deal with the little bits that put that picture together.
Yeah, and trust the other person that you share the same vision and step back a little bit and focus on your own area.
Sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
So obviously, what with being a horror film, there are some elements in this film that push the envelope somewhat, and I'm just wondering, is there anything that either due to restrictions, budget, time, anything like that, anything that appeared in your original draft of the script but didn't quite make it into the final cut, or anything where looking back now you wish, really wish I could have done that with the film?
I have planned a whole list of things I wish I could do, but it was just 18 days and it was crazy.
18 days?
18 days. We had a very limited crew. It was a limitation with equipment, so we had a lot of improvising as far as lights and as far as filming. We had one camera at first and we had to get another camera to be able to finish the script. So there was like a lot of struggle with this. It's not just high budget, a lot of time, a lot of help movie. No, that was just basically 5 people of crew, and we were really trying to make things work because we have limitations as far as equipment. We were filming that in Pennsylvania, which is not really a state prepared for that kind of production. So we had to improvise with equipment, with staff, with qualified people. And so that was intense, very intense shooting. Luckily, we have good DP who was able to work in such a pressure environment, and we were able to finish the script, but there's a lot of scenes we had to cut out and make some sacrifices. So yeah, it's not perfect world, really. It's not a glamour work. You work in high heat without shadow. We complain we're supposed to have casted skies for the scenes, outdoor scenes, and we had heat, no shadow at all. So it was just challenge, constantly improvising, moving scenes to different days depending from the weather or situation. And It was like a boot camp, going to boot camp, and you just want to, at some moment, just kill yourself. I had a moment that I would, couple more hours, and I would just die on the set of it. It's hard physical work.
It really sounds like it.
Yeah, I mean, the script, we look back, because since it premiered at Fantasia, it's kind of, you go back through your old notes, and I started outlining the story in January of 2013. So it's been a 7-year journey. So yeah, the script, obviously changed over time. But as Dorota said, we just had 3 weeks to shoot, and I mean, filmmaking is, it's like war, and it's a lot of compromise, and really it's if you have a good cast and a good crew that are flexible and inventive, and can improvise with you, you're able to finish the film. And thankfully, we had people wearing different hats, playing multiple roles. Some people didn't make it all the way through the journey, and we had to fill gaps. And yeah, it was a challenge. But in the end, really happy with how it turned out. Yeah, there will be. I mean, when the film is released, you'll see there will be a number of deleted and extended scenes, because some things just didn't work. But as far as like let's say the third act, yeah, there were some things that we wanted to do that either we just didn't have time or just didn't have the budget. I mean, there's a scene like at a tree house towards the end of the film that had a lot of action in it, but we had one stunt coordinator, and she was amazing. But some of the things that were on the page were like, yeah, you do not have the budget or the or the crew to support that level of stunts. So yeah, you just roll with it, and work with the tools you've got, and improvise. Yeah, this is key.
Were there a lot of changes made on the fly then, or did you at least?
Yeah, I mean, I would say
the whole end of the script was changed at the fly.
Yeah, a bunch of things changed for sure. We kept with for sure the original idea and the concept. Just sometimes coming to those endpoints and wrapping up storylines in a different way than and when you're editing, keeping the momentum, because as because I assume you've seen the film, it's very much a slow burn. So once things start ramping up, since we had already done all of the character development and set up the location and everyone's intertwining stories, in the first half of the film, once it gets going, we didn't want to slow it down again. I mean, there's a couple moments that we do take pause because they're like character related moments or relationship moments. But we wanted to really kind of keep ramping it up there at the end, because once you find yourself, when something bizarre, unexpected, terrifying happens in your life, when you're caught in the moment and that energy and that excitement, we wanted to try and duplicate that in the edit. So you're really kind of hit with a lot of things there at the end that throw you off. Sometimes, there's not explanation, but that's how real life is, right? You don't have all the answers. I don't particularly, I know it's used a lot in movies, and maybe movies of this kind, you would have had the scientist guy there, or you would have had the workers at the gas well site, and you would have explained away like a lot of that mystery. But fear of the unknown was a big part of the story. So it was just keeping that energy and that tension going, and I think so that worked a little bit in our favor in the edit towards the end, and with some of the stuff that we had to lose, it was just keeping that momentum going.
It's quite nice. In a lot of science fiction, you do have that kind of Captain Exposition type character, but I think it's right not to have it in a horror version, because fear of the unknown, that really is the greatest fear. So I think that was a solid choice. Anyway, that's all the questions that I have. So if there's anything you'd like to say to our audience about the film, then please, by all means, do.
I'll just jump in real quick and say, definitely check it out at GRIMMFEST. We're very excited to be playing, and just hope you like the film. No, it's a slow burn. It's a character built story, and people in the States, if not in the UK, because you guys have a ban on fracking very wisely. We're going through a lot of these issues here, and once you contaminate a water supply or a food source, we're all kind of screwed, whether you live on a farm or not. So it's kind of one of the messages.
And I just would like to add that that genre is more like a social realism. That's one thing, and then we have to remember that it's not a popcorn film you watch quickly and don't listen to the dialogue. So I wish the viewers take a break and sit down and just reflect a little bit about what they're seeing on the screen, and have that approach to that film, to not being disappointed that it's not flashy and explosions and anything like that. And also, what's the important part about this film? It's women in charge, women shown as the main characters, and they have something to say and decide, and every single move what we do on the screen, it's planned. It's not random thing what they're doing, and I think that's important to highlight that part too.
All right, well, thank you very much for speaking with me today, and I wish you all the best with the film, and enjoy the rest of GRIMMFEST.
Thank you, Kieran. If anyone wants to check us out afterwards, the website's unearthmovie.com.
All right. Thanks again, and goodbye.
Cheers. Thanks, Kieran.